Okay, what we're going to do now is take a boost up and try to do these with variables. So the first thing is a setup. So the setup is the denominator goes on the outside of our long division problem, and we write our polynomial on the inside. If there's any missing terms, you have to put those missing terms in there. And then we're going to do the same 4 steps that we just got done doing. So I'll rewrite those again. So the first thing we're going to do is divide. So this is very long. So what we want to do is we just want to make this a shorter problem. So we just want to look at x, and we want to see how many times x just goes into this first number. So ignore the x minus 8 for right now and ignore all this other stuff for right now. All you want to do is keep track of this very first term. So x goes into x cubed, x squared times. Now how did I get that? Remember, what we want to do is we want to divide, and then our next step is to multiply. So if I multiply x squared by x, I'll get an x cubed. But I have 2 things over here now. So as I got started, I ignore it, but now I can't ignore it. So now I'm going to take the x squared and multiply it by the second piece, which is a negative 8. And where am I going to put that? I'm going to put that exactly next to the x cubed term. So then let's go through our steps. We have what? Divide, multiply. Oh, now what are we supposed to do? Now we're supposed to subtract. So what are we going to subtract? We're going to subtract these values. So an x cubed minus an x cubed is going to be nothing. Be careful here when we subtract. A negative 9x squared minus a minus 8 is going to be a negative 1x. And this is where some students have some problems. So instead of subtracting, I add the opposite, and then it's a little easier to see how I get a negative 1x here. And this would be a negative 1x squared because I'm subtracting like terms. The next step in our process, remember, is bring down. So we're still going to bring down. And what are we going to bring down? The next term. So this time we're going to bring down the 7x. So to try to make the equation a little bit easier, again, all that I'm going to look at is this first term and this first term. So does x go into negative x squared? And the answer is yes. Or another way of thinking of that is, what do I have to multiply this by to get a negative 1x squared? So I need a negative 1, and x times an x will be a negative 1x squared. Oh, but you're not done. You also have to multiply this negative 1 times this negative 8. So negative times a negative is a positive 8. Oh, but you have that x. Let's go through our steps. What should we do next? Subtract. So 1 minus a minus 1 is going to be a 0. But again, to see that easier, change this to a plus a negative. So now we can see we have no x squared. You don't have to write that down. 7 plus a negative 8 is going to be a minus 1x. Let's repeat our process. So we've got to bring down. So when we bring down, we get a negative 1. Now, is there a number that if I multiply it by this x, I'll get a negative 1x? And there is. What's that value? A negative 1. So let's multiply. A negative 1 times x is a negative 1x. A negative 1 times a negative 8 is going to be a plus 8. I subtract. Again, negative 1 minus a minus 1 is going to be 0, but it's kind of hard to see, so just always change these to a plus negative, and you can see now our remainder is going to be a negative 9. So look at our example with the numbers. What do I do with this remainder? This becomes my numerator. And the bottom number is whatever I divide it into. So this is going to look weird, but we just make that our denominator. And that is your final answer. Hit pause. You can repeat your steps again in your notes. Okay. I've tried to color code this so you can see kind of where all these numbers come from. It's going to take you a while before you get this, and practice makes perfect. Let's try number 2 together. And really a setup is the first thing that we do. So this time we'll put a p plus 6. On the inside we'll have a 2p cubed and a 17p. We'll just write our inside polynomial, and then we'll proceed with our 4-step process. Okay. So what we want to do first is divide, and we want to see how many times p will go into 2p cubed. So think of this as a 1, so 1 times 2 will give us a 2, and p times a p squared will give us a p cubed. Now we can't subtract yet because we have this other number in here. So we're going to distribute and we're going to multiply by both of those numbers. So 2 times 6 is a 12, and p squared times no p will be a p squared. This will be a positive. Next process is to subtract. If you've done this right, this first term here will always be a 0. You can put that 0 in there, or you can just leave it out. Here I told you before, when you're subtracting, you can add the opposite, or when you're taking 17 minus 12, that's kind of easier to do. That would just be a 5p squared. Next process is to bring down. So when I bring down the 24p, now again, what am I looking for? I'm looking for what number can I multiply by p to get a 5p squared. So you always take the first number, p, and this 5p, this first piece, and that's how you start out. So again, a 1 times a 5 will give you a 5. We have a p, but we need a p squared, so we'll multiply by a 5p. We'll have 2 terms. Why do we have 2 terms? Because we have 2 terms over here. So 5 times 6 will be a 30, and we put that 30p right underneath. Our next process is to subtract. So once again, you can see how this 5p and this 5p squared will be 0. 24 minus 30 is actually a negative 6p. That's kind of hard to see. So change these two opposites, and then you can see positive 24 plus a negative 30 will give you a negative 6p. Bring down. We're not going to worry about this number yet. All we have to do is try to get this negative 6p. So how am I going to multiply by p to get a negative 6p? We just multiply by a negative 6. So negative 6 times 1p will be a negative 6p. That's our goal. We're trying to get that to be 0. Oh, but wait, we've got negative 6, and we've got to multiply that by the positive 6, which is a negative 36. Remember, we're subtracting here, so 43 minus a minus 36 is going to be a negative 7. How do you see that? Change these to plus negative. Now you can see 43 is more negative than 36, so you end up with a minus 7. How do you write that as a remainder? Minus 7 over p plus 6. So again, I've given you 2 problems to kind of work through on your own. I'll put final answers down, and you can see if you got the right answer. If not, star those, and that's what you want to come into class with questions as soon as you come in tomorrow. as you can see, with 3 and 4, I did all the work. Check your work, see if you came up with the same answer. If not, that's the first questions that you want to ask when you come in and see me.